I'm sure when you hear that somebody studies an astrophysics degree, you assume that it's quite challenging. And that would be a correct assumption. It was very challenging and often quite painful. But amidst all the pain and suffering, there were quite a few enjoyable modules and classes that I took. And since I recently graduated with an astrophysics degree, with a first class, humble brag, I thought I'd talk about some of the most enjoyable / favorite modules from my entire astrophysics degree. My first year was probably the most difficult of my entire degree, but out of the 8 or 9 modules that I took, I think my favorite by far was just titled Astronomy. It was pretty much a whistle-stop tour of all of astronomy from the Middle Ages up to now, and then pretty much every major discovery from now to the past 150 years. So we learned about all the big names like Kepler, Galileo, Hubble, Einstein, even though he wasn't really an astronomer, Jocelyn Bell Burnell, and Stephen Hawking, and a few other people. We then learned about planets, stars, galaxies, distance measurements, even a bit of planetary geology, so we pretty much covered all the bases there. I think the purpose of this module was just to give us a taste of what was to come for the rest of our degree, because if you didn't like anything in this module, you probably wouldn't like the degree. And if you're excited by this module, you probably really would like the rest of the degree. Another favorite module of mine was General Relativity and Cosmology. I don't think I can exaggerate how much I love this module. This was definitely the number one module from my entire degree for me, and I just love everything about it. This was a final year course, and for good reason, because we needed to know about differential equations and special relativity. Special relativity I did in first year in conjunction with a bit of quantum mechanics, and differential equations I did in first and second year. But you need to just have your wits about you when it comes to the math. You don't really want to be struggling with differentiation in this module. For the GR component of this module, it was pretty much 90% all maths. The maths you need to do to be able to do GR. So that was quite fun. It was mainly a notation that was a tricky thing. We didn't learn new types of math per se. It was all partial derivatives and algebra. It's just when you see something, do you know what to do to this to make it correct? So initially we just covered simple notation and properties of tensors because we hadn't seen tensors before, only matrices. Then the different kinds of tensors like covariant, contravariant, mixed tensors. And then a few rules and shortcuts which were useful, such as the omission rule and the Kronecker symbol. We then moved on to tensor algebra, shortly followed by tensor calculus. Then concepts such as curvature, geodesics, a metric, etc. And right at the end, we were shown some actual consequences and physics of general relativity. I think what first comes to mind is gravitational lensing and the equivalence principle. I really liked seeing gravitational lensing because at the end of my second year of my degree, I did a gravitational lensing summer internship and I understood a tiny amount of the theory, but going into gravitational lensing from a GR perspective and looking at the actual maths behind why gravitational lensing happens just made me understand what I did last year a little bit more. The cosmology part of this module was really amazing. We were introduced to key observations of the universe, such as the cosmic microwave background, redshift, the universe's expansion. We talked about Olber's paradox in a bit more detail, for example. Then we were introduced to the Friedmann equations, the field equation, and of course, dark matter. I don't think anyone can really find that boring. I mean, it might not be your favorite, but it was certainly exciting and I loved it. The third module that I'll talk about was titled Galaxies. This is the module that pretty much made me interested in galaxies for the rest of my future research. And I didn't really know someone could just look at galaxies and do science on galaxies as a profession, to be honest. I knew there were some galactic astrophysicists out there, but I didn't really know that I could do it. And once I finished this module, even partway through the module, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I think that also played a part in me getting my internship at Oxford, where it was all observational astrophysics, looking at galaxies, looking at molecular gas within galaxies, and even my PhD, which is on galaxies. So we covered stellar and galactic interactions, classifying galaxies based on their color, spectra, metallicity, age, etc. And we looked at active galactic nuclei, which was cool. I didn't know what one of those was before. It's just an extremely active black hole, for those who are wondering. Then we had about half of the module which was slightly mathematical, but it was pretty simple and all the mathematical hard work had been done in the past 2.5 years with other modules, so anything we saw now wasn't going to be too tricky. And then finally, we just went into a bit more detail about things that we would have encountered previously. So things like distance measurements, looking at emission lines from galaxies, large-scale galaxy distribution like clusters, superclusters, and voids. I think this was just a dream module for anyone interested in full-on astrophysics, because this was all about stars and galaxies and everything you could possibly want to learn about them, at least in the undergrad course. So those are my 3 favorite modules from my astrophysics degree. This was a bit of a different video to one I usually make, but hopefully you liked it, and I shall see you at some point soon for another episode of me talking about astrophysics.